So Shane, what's going on, man?
What's up, brother, man?
Not much. So look, I want to tell our audience before we get started today that we have been at this for a while, and we appreciate you guys tuning in and week out. We've had some great guests and some great conversations. But now the real pain begins, Danny boy. So with that being said, allow me to say welcome back to the Prop Culture Podcast. I am your host, Matt Trader, and to my left, as always, is my tag team partner, Mr. Shane Snoots. And today, ladies and gentlemen, no matter where you are, from the Valley to Okinawa, we're going to need you all here for the next hour. And that's because we have a very special guest, a man that is going to show us the way of the Cobra, a man that played Mike Barnes in Karate Kid 3, a man that some might know as Deacon from A Bold and the Beautiful, and the newest cast member to the hit Netflix series, Cobra Kai. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to give to you all today actor, author, and Emmy-winning producer, Mr. Sean Kanan. Sean, what's going on, brother?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
Good to have you on, man.
So, look, man,
Thanks, brother.
So we appreciate you coming on, taking the time to be with us. You know, we want to delve into so much stuff that you've done, from Cobra Kai to Karate Kid. Of course, we're huge fans of those programs.
Oh, yeah.
But before we do, I kind of want to do the cliche thing, and I apologize because I know you've told this story 1,000 times, but I don't know that our audience has heard it. And it's a really, really cool story. But why don't you go back and to the beginning and kind of tell us how you, a guy from, was it Murfreesboro, Pennsylvania? Right?
Well, I was from Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
Okay,
Where I was from, yeah.
From Newcastle, Pennsylvania, landed the role of Mike Barnes in Karate Kid 3.
Okay. So, yeah, I come from Newcastle, Pennsylvania, which is a western Pennsylvania town about 40 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. I was going to school at Boston University. I was studying political science, but I really knew that I wanted to make it to either New York or Los Angeles to start my acting career. So I eventually transferred out to UCLA. Going to UCLA, but I was already auditioning in acting class, doing all the stuff that I needed to do. And I got a message from a gentleman named Sensei Fumio Demura, who was the head of my martial arts organization, and he also happened to be Pat Morita's stunt double. And he said, there's going to be a breakdown, a call for the new bad guy for the Karate Kid 3. And he said, I think you ought to audition for it. I said, okay, sounds good. So they had an open call, which means basically anybody on the planet can show up and try out for this role. And I remember that before the audition, I went back to Pennsylvania, I think it was for a holiday or something, and I was hanging out with a couple of my buddies at this it was like a Quickie Mart gas station type deal where we used to go and, we'd shoot the shit and everything and hang out. And I said, there's this audition for this role in Karate Kid 3. And I said, I'm going to get it. And they said, yeah, go do it, man. And so when I was back in LA, I went to the audition. And before I went to the audition, actually, I tried going to the casting director's office to audition because, I was in the Screen Actors Guild. I was a professional actor, although I had just started, and she wouldn't give me an audition. She said, you have to go and, basically stand in line with everybody else. And so I showed up at the studio, and there must have been 1,500, 2,000 people standing around the studio. It was truly, it was intimidating to see all those people. And I got in line, and I could see that John Avildsen, who was the director of the Karate Kid 2, who won the Oscar for Rocky, was at the very end of the line. He was making his way up the line. He had a couple of his production people with him, and he had a little camcorder. He was filming people and intermittently stopping and asking people to do kind of an improv with him. And I knew I had a couple seconds to get this guy's attention. Most moments in life require hard work, and they unfold over the course of time. This was not one of those moments. This was one of those times when it was going to happen in a split second. And so as he made his way towards me, I got his attention eye contact wise, and he stopped in front of me, and he said, okay, I want you to intimidate me. And so I did. And he said, okay, great, I believe that. And they set me inside the soundstage, and it was like a 3-ring circus. There was Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, all these news outlets were there. And there was Ralph Macchio. They had constructed a set, and they asked me to go do a scene with Ralph Macchio, which I did. And, I felt like I did a really good job. I drove home that night, and because I'd been there all day. And, I remember looking up at the Hollywood sign as I was driving back to my crummy little apartment above Sunset Boulevard, above the Whiskey nightclub. And, we actors, we say sometimes the Hollywood sign smiles at you and other times it smirks at you.
Yeah.
And it was definitely smiling that night. I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
And a couple days later, I unfortunately got the news that they were not going to hire me for the role. And it was absolutely and utterly crushing. And I was pretty depressed for a while, but fate had something in store for me that I could have anticipated. I got a call from the studio, and they asked me to come back to the producer's office. And I figured, okay, they're certainly not going to call me to come back and tell me I didn't get the job again. So maybe the bad guys got some buddies or something like that, and I'm going to get a little role or something like that. So I got there, and the producer, Sheldon Traeger, was there. John Avildsen, the director, was there, and Robert Mark Kamen, who created The Karate Kid, who's the writer of, the Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3, who, he wrote Taken. He wrote The Transporter. I mean, he's a big A-list writer. He was there. He's also a black belt. And he asked me to perform a couple of martial arts moves for him, which I did pretty easily. And they all disappeared into a side room there, but they left the door open. And I could see them talking, and they popped their heads out a couple minutes later, and they basically said, you got the job, this is your deal, go to wardrobe. And I mean, it happened so fast, I didn't really have time to digest it. I didn't have time to call my parents. I mean, I was literally, it felt like I was being, put in a conveyor belt of just meeting all the different people from the different departments and, figuring out the schedule for fight choreography and rehearsal. And it was a lot. And that's how I got the role.
That's amazing. And you already had prior experience with martial arts, obviously. So you did a lot of your own stunts.
I did. Yeah.
And
I did all my own stuff.
Yeah, and you were like one of the only actors to do his own stunts, correct?
No, Thomas Ian Griffith did all of his.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a terrific martial artist.
Okay, but Ralph didn't, obviously. But
Ralph did most of his. I think he did most of his. And, they tried to have everybody do as much as they could. Obviously, using stuntmen is something you want to try not to do if possible, because, you always want it to look like your leads are doing that heavy lifting with the action. Sometimes there are certainly things that, the actors can't do, and you got to call them the stunt guys. Either they can't do them physically or they can't do them for insurance purposes. Like, for instance, when there's a scene in Karate Kid 3 where I'm in this convertible Mustang and we're doing donuts in front of the bonsai store, and then we crossed the tracks of a speeding train. And I was very happy not to do that stunt. And, it in no way impugned my sense of masculinity not to be in a car narrowly missing an oncoming train.
Yes. So from doing your own stunts, I actually learned this recently. You almost died, right, while shooting Karate Kid 3. Isn't that right?
I did. Yeah, I did. We had been filming for a couple weeks, and after about a month of rehearsal, and we were doing a stunt that took place in the Cobra Kai dojo, and I had to do this. It wasn't even really a stunt. I was standing in a stationary position, and I had to kind of throw myself on the ground about 2 feet away. And I did it again and again and again. And we were breaking for Christmas, and I started having some pretty significant pain in my upper left thigh. So I was taking a lot of aspirin. I figured it was from all the karate I was doing. And I drove to Vegas with a friend, drove through the desert, and we got to Vegas. It was Christmas Day, 1989. and I passed out. And it turned out the pain in my thigh was internal bleeding, and the blood was dripping on my femoral artery, and that's what was agitating, the nerve there. And the aspirin, which is of course a blood thinner, exacerbated the bleeding. And they took me to Humana Sunrise Hospital, and they said, "We're going to try and save your life. We don't know if we can. We're going to try."
Wow.
And I was 22 years old, and while everyone else was, wrapping gifts and preparing to see family for Christmas, I was literally fighting for my life. Christmas Day in Vegas, and so they said, "Look, we have to take you in for surgery." And I thought they meant Monday, and they met in 15 minutes, and they called my parents in Pennsylvania. They could only get one ticket because it was like midnight right there, so they decided my dad would come out. And so as they wheeled me, into the operating room, I sort of waved goodbye to my friend. It was a girlfriend at the time, and I kind of mustered up as much sort of faux bravery as I could, because it was without a doubt the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
Yeah.
To be in great physical shape, to be that young and be told that surgical professionals might not be able to save your life was pretty scary.
Yeah.
And so I do come from a family of doctors, and so they were speaking back and forth with my uncle, who's a world-renowned otolaryngologist, plastic surgeon, because they couldn't really figure out what was wrong with me. So they were going to have to do exploratory surgery, which means they basically gut you like a catfish and just go in there and find the bleeder. And so he told me, my uncle, I remember he told me, he said, if you can get them to not cut your abdominal muscles, that's the best thing, because if they cut your abdominal muscles, you're out of the movie. They have to slice through them. So I said to the doctor, I said, please, if you can, resect the abdominal. Here I am, I'm 22. I'm telling this doctor how to do surgery. And I'm like, can you just, resect the muscles? Well, they did do that. And ultimately it allowed me to stay in the movie. I woke up in the hospital room, and they couldn't get me a private room. There was some older gentleman was in a bed next to me, and he died a few days later, which that was a little ominous. And there's my dad. He was sitting there, and he just looked gray. And not too long after, I got a call from John Avildsen, and there wasn't a whole lot of, "Oh my God, how are you?" It was, "We need to get you back to set. You got about 10 days. Welcome to Hollywood, kid," right?
Wow.
And no flowers, no cards. And so I remember, I think it was the day after I had surgery, I had a 15-inch wound on my abdomen with staples, and I got out of bed, and I was able to very painfully walk to the bathroom in the room. And I think the next day I was able to walk around the floor of the outside of my room, the entire floor of the, my ward or whatever. And a day or so later, I was able to walk around 3 or 4 times. And eventually, I think like the 4th day maybe, I had them release me against medical advice. And, I still had the staples in my stomach. And I went back to California to heal up for a couple days. And I got back to set as quick as I can. And they originally decided they were going to use a stuntman to do all the martial arts and would use me for the close-ups, which is just an absolutely horrendous option to be faced with for production. Yeah. Think about that for a second. You imagine if every single time you saw Mike Barnes doing martial arts, it wasn't me. Yeah. And then they cut to it would have looked horrendous. Oh, yeah. So they put me together with a guy who was a lineman for the LA Rams back in the 1989 when the Rams were here. His name was Kyle Borland. And they had a gym on the studio lot, and I started working out with him. And, it was 5 sit-ups the first day, and then 20, and then 50, and then 100. And long story short, I got myself back into as good a shape as I could get myself. I was a little fragile still, to be honest. I'd lost probably 20 pounds since I started the film. My wound was very much not healed. And, I had to do all this martial arts, and I always joke that it was a very good thing that, the Cobra Kai wore those black sleeveless skis, because if they wore a white one, you would have seen me bleeding through it every day. But ultimately, you know, I finished the movie. I did my own stunts, and a lot of people ask me what the most special film or television show I was ever in, and Karate Kid's right up there, but it's not up there just because it introduced me to a worldwide audience and because now I'm doing Cobra Kai. It was so special to me because at that very young age, when you still feel like you're invincible, I learned that I wasn't, but faced with an enormous challenge, you know, at least in that instance, I was able to fight my way back. And, you know, it called on me to show my character.
Yeah.
And, you know, it revealed a part of my character that I didn't know that I had up until that moment. And so for that reason, that film's very special to me.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's funny. The theme of Karate Kid kind of correlates so much, or at least the last scene of Karate Kid kind of correlates so much with what you faced, because when you really think about it, you know, when Daniel was laying there on the mat, and this is one of the most special scenes in my life that I've ever seen, and I'm not just saying this, but it taught me a lot, and he was so scared. It's the first time you probably ever seen LaRusso scared of an opponent, really. And Miyagi gets down there and he says, look, it's okay to lose to the opponent, but you must not lose the fear. You know, and your opponent at this time was death, really, and everybody's scared of death. And you stayed focused in that moment and got back to basically the biggest role of your life. I mean, just hats off to you, man. That's unbelievable.
Well, that has to hold like a significant kind of thing to you, because battling that and then getting back to the set and going through all the adversity, I mean, that's just a special role. No matter what, that'll always be like a special role for you, just because not only the lead role, but, you know, going through all of that, it's always, you got a special place in your heart for that. I mean, seriously, that's a lot to go through at 22. I mean, that's a lot.
So speaking of that,
sure was.
Speaking
of
that,
it's funny. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't trade that experience in my life either. As difficult and as frightening as it was, I wouldn't, if somebody said to me, would you like to just eliminate that from, you know, your history and never have gone through it? Absolutely not, because it was an amazing teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It pushed you to a different level. It made you realize you could go through all these things and still battle to get back to do it, which is cool. I mean, that's amazing in itself, but you know, there's things in life that we all go through, which is, you know, and then it correlates with something else in life, and that's what happened. You were going through the biggest role you had at the time. You're going through this and you're battling back to get through, and like you said, like, I can't have stunt doubles in this. Like, this doesn't make sense. What? No. Like, you're going to do it yourself. You know, there's a sense of pride that you have with that movie even more now because of what you went through, which is cool. That's the awesome part about it.
It's true. You know, there's that old adage that steel is tempered in the fires of adversity. And it's true. You know, our greatest moments of growth come from our difficulties and overcoming them, or at least trying to overcome them, you know, not from our greatest successes. And that really was a lesson.
Oh yeah. And you reached down deep to do that. So I'm sure coming back to do the Cobra Kai, and we're going to get into it, but this character always holds like a special kind of place for you, right? Because what you went through adversity wise to play this. Yeah. So that's what's awesome about it.
I don't know many actors that would probably have even, you know, going to that level to still do the stunts. Do you think the fact that you came from a blue collar town made you more, I guess, gave you the testicular fortitude to want to do that at that time? Do you think that played a role at all?
No, I mean, I hope so. I mean, you know, I was kind of like, I was a kid. I had a lot of advantages. I came from a well-to-do family, although I wasn't spoiled. But when I studied martial arts, you know, we lived in the suburbs, and I went into the city, and that's where I would study karate. And, you know, I was with a bunch of guys that were, there were some tough customers in there, some, you know, blue collar guys, tough customers. And it was a bit of a baptism by fire for me. You know, I think there was a lot of initially, well, what are you doing this because you can't play tennis at the country club sort of thing. and that kind of drove me to want to be tougher and more dedicated because I had to kind of prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Because they weren't entirely wrong. We did belong to a country club, and I did play tennis at the country club and all that sort of stuff. But I just kind of, I don't know. I found a place in the martial arts dojo that was, it resonated with something inside of me, something that I desperately needed, which was discipline and self-confidence.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to kind of let anybody push me out of that. And I think maybe that did play a role in my not getting pushed out of the movie. Another thing too, now that I think about it, it's interesting. I like doing these podcasts, and it's funny. I told you that I didn't necessarily want to retell this story because I felt that your audience probably heard it. But as I tell this story, sometimes I recognize and learn new things about myself that I might not have thought about. And one of them was that, I was bullied a lot as a kid. And I think that on some level, I associated the potentiality of not being able to finish the film with being bullied. You know what I mean? Like I was being pushed out of it. It was mine.
Yeah.
And that caused me to kind of flare my hood. You know what I mean? And just kind of be like, oh no, this isn't going to happen.
We totally understand.
And yeah.
And that probably led you to be that character, the energy that you brought to that character, that probably helped you as well. Going through that as a kid, when you're bullied and then you play that character, it's like you bring that forte. You're like, oh, I know exactly everything. I hate it. Oh, I can be that. I'm going to turn it up 10 more notches.
Speaking of turning it up,
that's exactly right.
Speaking of turning it up and being a bully, so let's go back to that last final scene, right? I got to ask you, how much of that was ad-libbed? I mean, when you're on the mat, just like your karate shit, LaRusso, I mean, it just didn't feel like this was scripted.
There was a lot of it was ad-libbed. John Avildsen did come up to me and say, tell him his karate shit. Tell him his teacher's a slope. I mean, I don't know that I would have kind of gone to the racial slurs. Certainly not in this environment. I wouldn't have. But listen, this is a character. He wasn't supposed to be a good guy. Mike Barnes was a sociopath.
Yeah, this is not Johnny Lawrence.
Every now and then I'll get somebody who'll say, well, what do you think about the way that he talked to me? I said, I think it's abhorrent. Of course I do, but I'm also not Mike Barnes. You know what I mean? But they really did sort of let me go. They were like, just, they let me off the chain and just said, go for it. And I did. And that's what came out. And I don't know if the producers, were completely convinced that I was going to be able to bring it home. I mean, because, I was a very, very new green actor. I mean, I had a lot of natural charisma and I had a lot of, youthful exuberance and energy and everything. But I really was at the very, very beginning of studying acting. And so, this is the final scene. And if this scene doesn't work, the movie doesn't work at all. And I could see that after I did a couple of those takes, the producers were smiling ear to ear and clapping because it was like this enormous relief to them that they realized that it was going to work. Because if I wasn't able to legitimately terrify, Daniel, and if it looked like he was faking it, then the movie's done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, speaking of the role, and obviously that role was so huge to you, and most people in life don't get the opportunity to go back and kind of recreate the past. Everybody always wants to. Everybody wants to go back to the glory days, right? And you're getting ready to do that, or you have done that, but we're getting ready to watch you do that. Right. What are you feeling right now, man, to come back to this role? Tell us. I mean, what kind of emotion are you feeling over this?
Oh, boy. Well, there's a lot of emotions. I mean, look, first of all, this has become an international phenomenon. I mean, Cobra Kai is just a juggernaut. And to be a part of it is truly extraordinary to see I'm on The Bold and Beautiful, and The Bold and Beautiful is syndicated in 40 countries. So I have experience being on a show that's a worldwide sensation. But, Cobra Kai is, it's different. It's amazing to me and very flattering that after 35 years, the character I played still has, relevance and a sense of interest from the fans. So that to me is amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible to be able, or to have been able to go back and take this character that was very much a one-dimensional character when I played it in Karate Kid 3, and that's what they wanted. They wanted this guy to be kind of he was a bit of a comic book villain. But now to go back as a guy that's 55 years old, that's been acting for 35 years, that's I've won an Emmy, I've done 1,000 episodes of television, I've worked. To be able to bring my work experience and my life experience to the role, and be able to portray the character in a much more highly defined and deeper way, which you'll see.
Yeah.
That was terrific. I mean, I don't look at it like a do-over, because I don't think it needed a do-over, but it's great to be able to expand it and show a lot of evolution, development, and growth on the part of the character in a lot of different ways. And that was really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the Cobra Kai series they've fleshed out all of the characters. Like, bringing them back, you see more of them now. It's not like you just said. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this season because it's going to add a new dimension to your character. We're gonna flesh out a lot of the stuff that was left out, and that's what they've done with everyone. I mean, from the first season, and that's the one thing that I will say, Cobra Kai, like, typically when you hit fourth season, you're still kind of trying, you're running out of ideas. These guys seem to step it up each season. They're adding another piece. So is there some new, and I know you can't give us a spoiler, is there something really you're excited about this season, or anything that, just without spoiling anything, is there something that's new to you, or give us something, give us a little clue?
There's really nothing that I can tell you. I will say this, though, that aside from being an actor trying to promote a show that he's on, season 5 is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It is epic.
Yeah.
All of the different components and storylines are like firing on all pistons.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's true what you said. It gets difficult. Season 4, season 5, traditionally are when shows start to, hit that. It wouldn't be sophomore, but they call that the sophomore lull or whatever. But no, this is terrific, and I can't wait for people to see it, because I just think that there's, like you said, there's further development for all the characters. The characters face bigger challenges, combat bigger flaws within themselves. Obviously, there's interaction with new characters. The threat is more significant with, Cobra Kai trying to take over the martial arts world in Valley, and the battle lines are drawn.
Yeah. One question I've always had, and I'm going to ask this, and because I think honestly, me personally, I could be completely wrong, but I think the most natural storyline in the Cobra Kai series would be Johnny versus Mike Barnes. And the reason why is because it comes from a question that I've had since I was a kid. Like, so Cobra Kai 2, or Karate Kid 2, took place in Okinawa, right? But Karate Kid 3 took place in the Valley. And, where was Johnny Lawrence? I mean, that was his hometown. This guy comes in, that's a national tournament terror, comes in and basically takes over his role. And, Johnny, he doesn't know about it. You know what I mean? So as a kid, I always wondered this. And
well, if I had to kind of extrapolate on that, I would say that if you remember at the end of Karate Kid 2, Kreese and Johnny have a big falling out.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
So I don't imagine that in Karate Kid 3, Kreese would have said to Terry Silver, "Hey, I got this kid who's the guy, Johnny Lawrence." So Johnny Lawrence would have told him to go take a hike.
Yeah.
You got to remember too, Johnny Lawrence was the All Valley champion. Mike Barnes was the national champion.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there is from a Karate Kid lore standpoint, there's no comparison between a national champion and some kid that won a tournament in the Valley.
Yeah,
that's not to take anything away from Johnny Lawrence.
Yeah,
I always marvel at the fact that people wonder about Johnny and Mike fighting when the two of them never knew each other. They have no beef together between them, but yet. Still, maybe it's the battle of the two blonde guys or something like that. I don't know.
I just always, I guess maybe it's like me thinking like somebody took your role. And I think about like high school sports. Like you always kind of knew what the next team was doing, even if you had already graduated. So it's like, what was Johnny doing during that time? But
again, to extrapolate, what would Johnny have done after that? I think he, was done with Cobra Kai. I mean, I think he probably, was very disillusioned with how things shook out with Kreese.
Yeah.
And if you remember at the end of the Karate Kid, Johnny raises Daniel's hand and says, "You're okay, LaRusso."
Yeah.
So Johnny was not a bad guy. No. Did he do some stuff that was like, was he a dick sometimes? Yeah. But he wasn't a bad guy.
No.
Mike Barnes was a bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you see him when he first comes in and meets Terry Silver, and he's being charming and, sort of modest and humble. It's an act. I mean, it's a manipulation.
Yeah.
We won't even go into the fact that Terry Silver was a grown man naked in the hot tub entertaining a 17-year-old boy. I mean, where the hell was, what was his name? To Catch a Predator.
Yeah, what was going on there?
Yeah, that's definitely not happening in today's world.
A little weird.
That's the 80s though, man.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that I don't know that Johnny Lawrence was the guy for the job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
so I think that's probably one of the reasons. Yeah, you bring up a good point. A lot of people feel that the Karate Kid 3 should have been 2 and 2 should have been 3.
Yeah, it makes sense. But honestly, we're both, Shane and I are like pro wrestling fans. I'm 41 and still, keep up with it, right? So one of the things that's key about pro wrestling is if you want somebody to lose basically and take the belt off them, you got to keep them looking strong so you can promote them and use them down the road. And honestly, I think about it, and Mike Barnes looks stronger than any of the other returning villains because Danny wound up beating like Chosen's ass. He beat Johnny, but Mike Barnes, he really didn't beat Mike Barnes. Mike Barnes whooped his ass and then kind of beat himself because of the deal he made with Terry Silver, right? So you come back looking strong, man, in my opinion, So.
We see.
Yeah.
So 12 more days, brother.
Yeah, that's right. This is exciting.
So speaking to Johnny, man, is there any? He's been the central character, and you're about the same age as Billy or William, right? So is there anything, being that you grew up in the '80s, right? And this is prop culture, right? Is there anything that is relatable to that Johnny Lawrence character? That you feel right in real life,
Well, listen, I love the fact that in a lot of ways, Johnny Lawrence is like an anachronism, I mean, he's like this guy, living in present day who still got one foot in the 80s because, the 80s was such a great decade. And I completely relate to that. Everything from the music to, I think everybody thinks the music from their generation, their period of coming of age is the best music there is because, you're at such, you're at a vulnerable point in your life and you're at a point where you're growing and figuring out who you are and you hear this music that's powerful and it's so, it affects us so much. So I completely get that. So I love that character. And I think, one of the most brilliant things that the three creators of the show have done is their ability to straddle the fence between two age demographics, the young kids like, Tori, Miguel, and Robbie, and Samantha, and then you got the old guys like, Johnny and Daniel, and they're able to write jokes and material that some speak to one group, some speak to another, and others speak to both. And it's very difficult to keep two different age demographics interested in a show, and they've done it.
Yeah. Speaking of music, real quick. So one of my probably my favorite scene of the entire series to this point is when Daniel and Johnny are riding in the car and they're listening to Speedwagon, Take It on the Run. I just thought that was a classic scene. Out of all the Karate Kid movies, what's your favorite song from any of the soundtracks, real quick?
Oh, come on. You're the best around.
All right. I was you got it right. You got to have that. I'd tell you, man, Cruel Summer has actually become like on every one of my summer playlists.
Cruel Summer's really good. Yeah. But Cruel Summer's really good. I like that. That's a close second.
You know, Ace of Base, I never thought I would ever say this, but Ace of Base I actually think has a better version than Bananarama, but I'm not going to go there. We won't spend too much time on that take. So one of the things I do want to ask you, and this question kind of comes from, you just never know what the universe is going to send you. And this comes from the autocorrect that you sent me in the text message when we originally started communicating. But one of the common themes of Karate Kid, right, is the absence of many of the characters' fathers. You know, you have Daniel who lost his father. Mr. Miyagi lost his father. They had that epic scene by the cliff in Karate Kid 2, which was just, amazing cinematically. And then you got Johnny, whose father we found out through Cobra Kai was estranged from him. Now we've got Miguel and Robbie and Tori all struggling with the loss of their father.
It's a good observation.
Yeah, Shane and I both, and we talk about our dads a lot on here because, we've always, I think, kind of felt, at least me, felt this good dad guilt because Shane and I have had great fathers in our lives.
Yeah.
And they've played such vital roles in our lives, and we like to talk about them. And I know you and I kind of briefly communicated, and you talked about your dad. And I just wanted to ask you, what kind of role has your father played in your life?
My dad's a tremendous guy, and he's played a profound role in my life. My parents just celebrated their 59th anniversary, I think.
Yeah.
They have been incredibly supportive of me. My dad was, he went to Wharton and Brown, very educated guy. So when I told him I was going to, go out to LA to become an actor, it was like saying I was running away to go join the circus. But he still supported me in every way possible. And my mother too, obviously. And, it's just, he's been an incredible example for me for a lot of things. He's a guy that behaves with, incredible kindness and integrity. And I like to think that that's some of that rubbed off on me. Those are two things that I think are incredibly important: compassion, integrity, kindness. He continues to play a huge role in my life.
And I know he's an author, and obviously you're an author, and I want to talk about getting the Way of the Cobra book here in a minute. But before I do, you put out an Instagram post, I don't know when it was, but I recently saw it, and it touched me because, speaking of music and thinking of, your generation is the greatest, in music or whatever, I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan, like obsessed. And there's a song called Drifting by Pearl Jam, and Eddie has a lyric, and it says, "It's not the world that's heavy, it's just the things that you save. My road, it may be lonely just because it's not paved, but it's good for drifting away." And the reason I'm saying that is because we're also talking about absence, right? And this post you put up was about absence and how, people are all consumed with buying things and everybody wants material things. But sometimes it's not the material things or what's present that's valuable, but that actually absence might even be more valuable than being present. And so why don't you elaborate that? I really want you to tell our audience a little bit about what you touched on there, because it was amazing, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think we live in a society that is very preoccupied with the acquisition of material possessions, promulgated by social media. Especially kids are faced with, all this conspicuous consumption that celebrities post on their Instagram feeds, a lot of which is not even necessarily real and is constructed, for sort of a way to build image. When you start getting completely caught up in what you have to get, it becomes like, a dog chasing its tail. And sometimes when we look at the things that are absent from our lives that we want, they can be highly motivating. Mm-hmm. If you lack money in your life, if you have the absence of financial security, you can cultivate the attitude and say, well, everybody who's got money, they must have screwed someone over to get it, or, all it does is give you problems and taxes and blah, blah. Okay, if you want to create that story, that pretty much assures that you're going to remain in a place of financial scarcity. But if you want to say, okay, I don't have the money I want right now, but you know what? That's okay. I'm going to let it drive me and fuel me. But I'm also going to realize there's probably people with a lot less than I have, and maybe I'm going to go out and do something of service. I'm going to go out and help somebody who has even less, because comparatively, I live in a world of abundance. And when the universe sees that you're not behaving, that you're without something, it rewards you with it.
Yep.
You create opposition to one of the laws of the universe when you want something and behave as if you're always in need of it. The universe tends to not give it to you.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And so I think that's, if you want to find a relationship and you don't have a relationship in your life and you want it, you need to look at that absence and go, okay, why don't I have it? What's going on with me that I need to work on to attract that?
Yeah.
Who's in my life that I'm spending time with that is not creating the opportunity for me to be my best self, which is going to attract someone else. So sometimes, look, we don't want to live in absence with all things, but if you can learn sometimes to look at what is a perceived negative and how to turn it into a positive, it can work on your behalf.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that, I think that's probably a good segue into the way of the Cobra, because I'm sure some of the concepts you're talking about here probably have made its way into the book, which we haven't read yet. We haven't got the books, but either way, why don't you touch on the book, man? I know you got a sequel coming out to it too, but
Sure. Well, I just so happen to have a copy of it right here. So go figure, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, Way of the Cobra, the tagline for the book is "Unleash Your Inner Badass." And if I had to encapsulate the book in one line, I would say transform yourself and you can transform the world. The book is set up that I'm the sensei. You're in my dojo, the dojo of Cobra Life, and Cobra is an acronym. It forms the words character, optimization, balance, respect, and abundance. The chapters are divided into belts. And these are the strategies and the tactics and the philosophy that I've used in my life to achieve some of my success and to overcome some of my challenges. I wrote this book at a time when I desperately needed it. And in writing this book, I saved myself. I was at a point where I had some pretty significant success. I had had some rather epic failures, some of which were well publicized, and I was looking in the mirror going, okay, what's my next act here? What am I going to do? And I was 35 pounds overweight. I had no prospects for acting work. I was re-engaging with some old demons that I thought I had long put to rest. And I realized I had to start doing some things very differently, very quickly, or I was going to rapidly sink into the sea of mediocrity. And I decided that rather than wait for my ship to come in, I was going to build the damn ship. I had to figure out how to do it. And so these are the strategies that I use to basically turn my life around. And in that 1 year, my second book, Success Factor X, became an Amazon new release bestseller. I lost the 35 pounds. My show that I created, Amazon Prime, on my show, Studio City, got on Amazon Prime. We got nominated for 16 Emmys. We won 3.
Yeah,
and I don't say any of that.
That's awesome.
I don't say any that impress people. I say to impress upon you what is possible when you are willing to get clear and make some changes. Now, these changes are simple, but they're not easy.
Right.
There's a big difference. What I'm going to tell you isn't brain surgery.
Right.
But doing it requires some things. And, this is what I touch on in my new book, which is Way of the Cobra, Welcome to the Kumite. I say some of what you're going to learn is philosophy. And philosophy is important because it teaches you how to deal with the bigger questions in life, how to ask the bigger questions of the world and of yourself. And some of what I'm going to teach you are nuts and bolts tactics and strategy. And that's what's going to teach you how to achieve what you want to achieve. But I said philosophy without strategy and tactics and the knowledge of how to take action remains theoretical. It's impotent. And tactics and strategy, not governed by self-discipline and philosophy, is like a samurai wielding a razor-sharp katana, but without the discipline and focus to reach his target. He's just thrashing around wildly, causing all kinds of damage, but it's not, what he wants to do. So the two have to be married together.
Right.
And that's why I'm really excited for the sequel to Way of the Cobra to come out. But the book Way of the Cobra, it takes you through a goal setting workshop, which allows you to identify what your why is, what's that driving force that is going to guide you to achieving what you want to achieve. Your why is that thing that, gets you up off the ground after you've been knocked down, all that sort of stuff. I get clear with defining your success, because everyone's success is different. I'm sure, like, if the three of us sat around, there's a bunch of things we all three want in our lives to be considered successful, but there's some things that I might want that aren't important to you, and vice versa.
Yep.
So you got to get clear with your success. But also, I talk about the invaluable effect of having a morning routine. I used to, as an actor, you tend to have a lot of free time. And I used to be a guy that would sleep in till, 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, now I get up at like 4:30, 5:30 in the morning.
It's this guy.
And you have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to get up. And I start my day with gratitude. And, this isn't a theological discussion for me. I thank God for five things that I'm thankful for, and, go through my communication with the Almighty, and do a little meditation, a little visualization, and focus on what the day is going to look like, so that I can set my intention and the trajectory for what is going to happen in the day. Now, look, it's like Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. But it doesn't mean that you can't set your intention. Of course, you're going to get curveballs. Meditation is absolutely fundamental, because it allows you to shut out that bombastic monkey chatter that's in your head. And if you get up early, before anyone else is up, before the phone's ringing, before the traffic out there, you can center yourself, and you really can dramatically improve the direction of how the day goes for you. Another thing is reading. Reading is the great equalizer.
Yep.
It doesn't matter whether you are, rich, poor, or incarcerated. Every man and woman has the ability to learn the thoughts of great men and women, and to travel to places that they might never think that they can see by reading. Read 10 or 15 pages every single day. At the end of a year, you've read 4,000 or 5,000 pages of different books. Increase your wheelhouse, increase your knowledge. I think that's imperative. And reading in itself is a form of meditation. What else do I talk about? I talk about the need to silence your inner critic. That negative voice inside your head that says you're not good enough, no one's going to ever love you, you're fat, blah, 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 blah. That's crap. And I teach you how to silence that. And I also teach you how to make peace with your inner child. And that might sound kind of woo-woo, and it's not, though. Each one of us, whether we admit it or not, carries an idea of our inner child around, and most of us loathe it. Most of it, I know for me, I saw this image of my inner child as being, weak and impotent and bullied and all of that sort of stuff. And in the book, I teach you how to make peace with it, how to not only ask forgiveness from your inner child, and how to forgive yourself. And once you do that, now you start seeing the image of your inner child as something that's empowering.
Yep.
Lastly, I'll tell you about the concept of story. Humans are really bad historians. Okay. I'll give you an example. So Matt, if I said to you, I want you to recount something really important to me that was a profound and seminal moment in your life. I want you to take me through it step by step. I want you to tell me about every sense that affected, and you were really honest and told me. And then I took you into a movie theater and I said, now we're going to watch a movie of what really happened. I would say at best you'd be about 40% accurate. And it's not because you're not telling me the truth. Yeah. It's not because you're lying. It's because we all see events through a very specific prism of who we are.
Yeah.
Are you a man or a woman? Are you, were you born now or were you born in the 50s? There's a million different things that refract the truth of the prism, okay? So if we agree that we're lousy historians, why not create stories that are empowering rather than stories that we wear around our neck like an albatross and debilitate us?
Yeah.
And the great example of this is, two boys that grew up in an alcoholic household. The father was abusive to the mother, couldn't keep a job, drank away all the money. First boy, he grew up and he mirrored his father's behavior, couldn't keep a job, was abusive, drank away the money. The second boy said, I'm never going to be that guy. He never drank, or maybe just drank moderately, went on to hold down an extraordinary job, do extraordinary things in his life. And when both boys were asked, how was it that you got to where you were? They both said, we watched our father. And what it was they each created a different story about what happened. One created the story, well, that's who my old man is. It's in my DNA. I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, I'm Irish, we drink, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Or it's nothing against the Irish people, because I am part of Irish. And the other kid created a story that absolutely motivated him to never be that individual that his dad was.
Yeah.
All about the stories that we attach. And one thing, without getting into another lengthy diatribe, but everything, I talked about in my book that everything is interconnected. And that's why I'm going to briefly go into this story. Have you guys heard the story about the Chinese farmer?
No.
Okay.
No.
So there was a Chinese farmer, lived about 700 years ago in one of the very poor provinces in southern China, and he lived with his one son and his one horse. And one day his one horse runs out of the corral, and his neighbor says, what bad luck? And the farmer says, we shall see. And the very next day, that horse comes running back at the head of 6 other wild Mustangs right into the corral. And the neighbor says, what good luck? Now you can plow your fields in a 7th the time. And the farmer says, we shall see. So the very next day, the farmer's one son went out to break one of these wild Mustangs, was thrown to the ground, broke his leg, which was a life-threatening injury at the time. And his neighbor said, what bad luck? And the farmer said, we shall see. The next day, the local warlord came at the head of 100 men to conscript all the young men from the province to go fight in a faraway war. But the son couldn't go because he had a broken leg. And the neighbor commented and said, what good luck? And the farmer replied, we shall see. And the point is, it goes on and on and on ad infinitum. What initially might seem like something that's negative and catastrophic might wind up proving to be one of the very best things that's ever happened to you. We don't know.
Yeah.
Humans don't have a very good perception of the 30,000-foot view.
Yeah.
So that's why, and I'll relate it to my Karate Kid story. When I didn't get the role, I was absolutely devastated. I attached all sorts of negative stories to what happened. Had I known that in a week fate was going to spin the wheel and I was going to get the role, would I have attached that story? And the point is, if you can resist the normal temptation to attach negative stories to events that in the moment you think are negative and catastrophic, you might find that with the expansion of time, they prove to be some of the very best things that have ever happened to you.
Yeah.
And I'll just end it with this. I got divorced 20-some years ago, and it was debilitating for me. And now, had that not happened, it wouldn't have opened me up to meet my wife, who we just celebrated our 10th anniversary. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. Reserve judgment if you can on, you just lost a job. I don't know anything that happens that seems like it's bad. Sure, there are things that happen that we don't want to happen to us, but be careful not to attach that negative story, because you don't know how it might manifest in your life, and it might wind up being very positive.
Yeah. I'll tell you, man, like I said, man, we can't wait to read the book. And I mean, I feel like I've already read it. He gave us the Mike Barnes Cliff Notes, man. That was amazing, But Sean, man, like we're almost out of time. We got about 5 minutes. So one thing I do want to say before I ask you this one question I've been wanting to ask you is, you mentioned philosophy.
Sure. And
I took a lot of philosophy in college, and to me, there's just so many benefits. And I've always said that more philosophy could solve so many of the problems and the divisiveness that we have in the world today. And I've always said if they made philosophy a required part of even elementary school curriculum, maybe middle school and up, I think it could change the world a lot more. But
I think it's a really brilliant observation, and I'll tell you why. It might not have the desired effect that teachers want, because what it would do is create a generation of kids that were inclined to ask deeper and smarter questions of themselves, their teachers, their parents, and the world around.
Yeah.
But you know what? I don't think asking questions is ever bad.
No.
What's bad is, look, as soon as you make another person wrong for their beliefs, that's when you start to have problems.
Exactly.
Okay? And I talk about this in my new book. And I know we're out of time here, but very few things are monolithic.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, all Russians are not bad because we're engaged in a conflict basically against them. All Chinese living under communist Russia are not, All people that are on the right or the left politically, first of all, many of them don't all think the same way.
No,
okay?
Right.
You've got liberals that are Catholic, that are pro-life, and you've got conservatives that are pro-choice. To look at groups being monolithic, you're already relegating them to a pigeonhole. And so I think this idea about philosophy, where you start to look at the nano shades of gray that separate us, rather than these monolithic blacks and whites.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a racial term. You start seeing that there is more intertwined intersectionality.
Yep,
and when you
absolutely.
see that there's intersectionality, those are the points of commonality where we can build rapport. And you, as a sales guy in real estate, that rapport is everything.
Yeah. And look, I honestly, like, the guys in the studio always like us to wrap it up in under an hour. And if we got on this conversation, we could talk for the rest of the day. But before we do, I got a couple minutes. We've got a couple minutes. I've got to ask you one question. You are one of the few people on the planet, I think, that's ever actually fought Chuck Norris. Correct? Didn't you take on Chuck Norris in Walker, Texas Ranger? Right? And
I was in a fight where Chuck was. I was originally supposed to fight Chuck, and they said, "Wow, we don't want Chuck beating up a young kid." And I was like, "Let him beat me up. Let him beat me up." So I was in a fight with Chuck. We were all in it together, but Chuck didn't actually punch me, and I didn't punch him.
Yeah.
But man, I remember when I was a little kid, my dad got me an autographed picture of Chuck Norris that said, "To Sean, keep on kicking." And I will never forget the feeling when I got dropped off at set. There's Chuck, and he's got his cowboy hat on and his 6 guns. And he was like, "Sean, we've been waiting for you to get that." But he made me feel like I was Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
And here's a guy that, he didn't even know it, but, 25 years before, I got a photo that he signed to just some other kid. And now here I am, the co-star on his show. And he is just a spectacular individual, and being able to work with Chuck was just a dream come true.
I tell you, man, that's awesome. And I take it, Chuck's karate definitely isn't shit, right?
It is definitely no joke. I'll tell you that much.
Speaking of shit, this has been the shit today, and we really appreciate you coming on the show and taking the time for us and our audience. And we'd love to have you on back after Cobra Kai releases.
Well, listen, hopefully you guys will have me back to talk about my new book.
Yeah.
I would really like that.
Absolutely.
You guys read this one. But you're going to love the next one too, okay?
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I want to wish you guys both tons of continued success. All right.
Yep.
It was great talking
Thanks,
to both
guys.
you, Shane, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll
Bye,
see you
guys.
next time right here on Prop Culture.
Take
Cobra
care.
Kai never dies, baby. See?